I'm Adam. And I'm Tango. And this is Where There's a Williams, There's a Way. Hey Tango, have you ever heard the sound of a trombone?
What's a trombone?
It's like a giant metal tube with a slide that makes funky sounds when you blow into it.
That sounds weird. What's so special about it?
Well, it's like music to our ears, literally. Imagine a horse trotting to the rhythm of a trombone solo.
But why would anyone want to play music for horses?
Who knows, maybe they're trying to start a band with us animals. We could call ourselves the Melodic Hoofbeats.
That sounds like a hoofing good time, but I think I'll stick to collecting shoes for now. Trombones might be a bit too avant-garde for my taste.
Today's book is brimming with ebullience and the joy of making music. It's a fitting tribute to a trailblazing musician and a great unsung hero of jazz, Melba Doretta Liston. Let's get started. Little Melba and Her Big Trombone by Katheryn Russell-Brown. Illustrations by Frank Morrison. Spread the word. Little Melba Doretta Liston was something special. The year she was born was 1926. The place was Kansas City, where you could reach out and feel the music. The avenues were lined with jazz clubs, street bands, and folks harmonizing on every corner. All the hot music makers made sure they had a gig in KC. From as far back as her memory would go, Melba loved the sound of music. Blues, jazz, and gospel rhythms danced in her head. The plink of a guitar, the hum of a bass, the thrum-thrum of a drum, the ping-pang of a piano, the tremble of a sweet horn. Notes stirred and rhythms bubbled all through Melba's home. She couldn't get enough. Music was always on her mind. She daydreamed about beats and lyrics. Music was on Melba's mind at night, too, when she should have been fast asleep. Melba loved to hum along with the radio. Sometimes the music sounded so good she cupped her ear to the majestic and closed her eyes. She especially loved Fats Waller with his growly voice and booming piano. The player piano came alive when Melba's kinfolk stopped by. While Melba pedaled, her aunties danced around the room.
Have you ever thought about picking up a musical instrument?
Me? I wouldn't know the difference between a saxophone and a sandwich.
Oh, come on, Adam. Learning an instrument is like collecting musical experiences. You could be the next great rock star teacher.
Well, I suppose I could give it a shot. But what instrument should I start with?
How about the kazoo? It's like the horse of the musical world. Simple yet charming.
The kazoo, huh? I guess I could handle that. But what if I end up sounding like a goose with a cold?
Don't worry, Adam. Even if you sound a bit off-key, you'll still be a hit with the kids.
All right, Tango, you've convinced me. I'll give it a try. But if I start sounding like a flock of geese, I'm blaming you. With all that music flying by, Melba wanted to create her own sounds. When she was 7 years old, she decided to sign up for music class at school. What instrument could I play? Melba wondered. At the traveling music store, Melba eyed a long, funny-looking horn. That one, she cried. It's beautiful. A trombone? Mama Lucille frowned. It's big, and you're a little girl. Please, Melba begged. Mama Lucille bought the shiny trombone on the spot. She couldn't say no to her only child. Melba beamed from ear to ear and squeezed her new friend. That night on the porch, Melba listened to Grandpa John play his guitar. This time, she had her own music maker. Grandpa John showed Melba how to cradle the horn. She tried to push out the slide, but her arm was too short. She had to tilt her head sideways and stretch out her right arm. Melba gave the horn a mighty blow. Honk, ha! It sounded bad, like a howling dog. I'm no good, Grandpa, Melba said, tearing up. If you can blow, you can play, Grandpa John said. Now stand up straight and blow steady. Melba stayed up real late and practiced until she could play a simple tune all by herself. Even with her keen ear, teaching herself to play the trombone was no piece of cake. But Melba kept blowing her horn, getting better day by day. The cool brass of the horn felt swell on her fingers. Before long, Melba and her horn were making magic. She was only 8 when the local radio station invited her to play a solo. Mama Lucille and Grandpa John were so proud as they watched little Melba play her big trombone. Hard times hit rock bottom in 1937. That's when Melba and her mother moved to Los Angeles. The long train ride took them 5 states west and worlds away from Kansas City. Melba's new teachers discovered she was as smart as a whip. Her test scores were so high, the principal skipped her up from 6th grade to 8th. In high school, Melba joined Alma Hightower's famous after-school music club. Melba quickly became the star player in the club's band, the Melodic Dots. The other club members struggled to keep up with Melba. Jealous boys called her bad names. She tried not to care, but way down deep, the names hurt. Melba used her horn to turn all those hurt feelings into soulful music.
I must say you're quite the shoe collector. Why, thank you. I do take pride in my eclectic taste in footwear.
It's quite impressive, really. I mean, most horses just eat hay and run around. But you've got style.
Well, you know, when life hands you hooves, you make horseshoes, and then you collect them.
True enough. But sometimes I feel a bit out of place too. I mean, I'm a teacher, surrounded by kids all day, and let me tell you, they're a tough crowd.
Oh, I can imagine. But hey, at least you've got opposable thumbs. That's got to count for something, right?
I suppose so. But Tango, you've got that certain equestrian charm. Kids love animals, especially ones with unusual hobbies like yours.
You're making me blush. But it's not easy being a horse with a shoe obsession. People look at me like I'm some kind of weirdo.
Hey, embrace your uniqueness, Tango. Who cares what they think? You're the most stylish horse in the whole darn town.
Thanks, Adam. And you're the coolest teacher in the whole school.
Melba's talent kept growing. She began writing music too. Then in 1943, when she was 17, Melba was invited to tour the country with a new band led by trumpet player Gerald Wilson. "Go meet the world," Mama Lucille said, and hugged Melba goodbye. "You have my blessing." Melba could feel it in her bones. The jazz scene was calling her name. Traveling with the band was a thrill. Each city from Salt Lake to New York was an eyeful of something new. Melba became a master musician. She composed and arranged music, spinning rhythms, harmonies, and melodies into gorgeous songs. And when Melba played the trombone, her bold notes and one-of-a-kind sound mesmerized the crowd. Still, Melba was lonely. She was the only woman in the band. Some of the men were cruel. Others acted as if she wasn't there. Melba let the music in her head keep her company. Rough times came when Melba traveled down south with singer Billie Holiday and her band. Some white folks didn't show good manners toward folks with brown skin. Hotel rooms were hard to come by, and the band members often had to sleep on the bus. Restaurants didn't always want their business. In the clubs, audience sometimes just sat and stared at the band or didn't show up at all. Discouraged, Melba almost walked away from her trombone for good. But Melba's fans wouldn't let her quit. By the 1950s, all the cool jazz musicians wanted some Melba magic. Dizzy Gillespie, Duke Ellington, Quincy Jones, and more. They wanted to be on the bandstand with Melba and her divine horn. They wanted to play Melba's music. Melba and her music trotted around the globe, dazzling audiences and making headlines in Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. All her life, Melba kept composing and arranging music, kept making her trombone sing. Spread the word, Melba Doretta Liston was something special. I've got to admit, sometimes I envy your job. No lesson planning, no parent-teacher meetings, just trotting around collecting shoes.
Oh, that's not all rainbows and horseshoes, Adam. Try explaining to people why a horse needs a closet full of shoes. They think I'm horsing around.
I can imagine. But hey, at least you're not dealing with standardized testing and curriculum changes. Plus, your students never talk back.
True, true. Although I have some stubborn shoes that refuse to cooperate. But hey, that's the shoe collecting life for you.
Well, here's to doing what we love, whether it's teaching or hoarding shoes. As they say, find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Although I think you've taken that quite literally.
Cheers to that, Adam. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got some shoe shopping to do. Gotta keep the collection fresh, you know.
If you love watching the videos that we love making, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I'm Adam.
And I'm Tango.
And this is Where There's a Williams, There's a Way. Afterward, Melba Doretta Liston, 1926 to 1999, was a multi-talented jazz virtuoso. A true pioneer, she was one of the first women of any race to become a world-class trombone player, composer, and arranger. The self-taught child prodigy, Liston began playing trombone at age 7. Her musical gifts were so extraordinary that one of her teachers in Los Angeles asked Liston's mother for permission to adopt the young musician. The teacher wanted to work with Liston and then send her to the finest music teachers available. Liston's mother did not let her daughter go. In high school, Liston joined Alma Hightower's after-school music club. Hightower, an African-American music educator, taught her students Black history through music, dance, and poetry. At age 16, Liston left Hightower's group to become a professional musician. Once she had her membership card from the Los Angeles Musicians Union, Liston began playing with Bardu Ali's pit band at the Lincoln Theater. While there, she also started writing music. After the International Sweethearts of Rhythm Band performed at the theater, they asked Liston to join them. She worked briefly with the famous all-girl group, but then returned to Ali's band. In 1943, Liston, only 17 years old, was hired for trumpeter Gerald Wilson's new band for a cross-country tour. She stayed with the band for 5 years. When Wilson's band broke up, Liston joined the band led by a famous trumpet player, Dizzy Gillespie. A year later, the group disbanded. And in 1949, Liston was invited to play with Billie Holiday's band as it toured the South. The tour did not go well. The farther south the band traveled, the smaller the audiences became. They did not approve the band's new bebop sound. The tour was cut short, and the musicians had to call home for money so they could return to Los Angeles. Liston decided to take a break from performing on the road. For a few years, she worked as a secretary at the Los Angeles Board of Education. She also had some small roles in movies. In 1956, Liston returned to music. Dizzy Gillespie asked her to join his band on a tour of the Middle East and Asia for the U.S. State Department. Then, Quincy Jones took a band on tour in Europe and invited Liston to come with them. In 1957, Liston met composer and pianist Randy Weston. They collaborated often for the next 40 years. Liston was the arranger for 10 albums for Weston. In 1958, Melba Liston and Her Bone was released. This album was the only one Liston recorded as a lead musician. In the 1960s, Melba Liston wrote arrangements and conducted recordings for many of the popular musicians and groups. Len Sirah, a composition Liston wrote, was one of her favorites. From 1973 to 1979, Liston lived in Jamaica and taught at the University of the West Indies. When she came back to the United States, she formed her own band. Liston had a stroke in 1985 that left her partially paralyzed, and she was forced to give up playing her beloved trombone. With the aid of a computer, Liston continued to compose and arrange works throughout the 1990s. Liston received many honors for her jazz musicianship. In 1987, the National Endowment for the Arts named Liston a Jazz Master, the highest honor the United States gives to a jazz artist. The first International Women's Brass Conference in 1993 honored Liston as a brass woman pioneer. In 1995, Liston was interviewed by the Smithsonian for his Jazz Oral History program. Melba Liston's collaborations are legendary. She played with the best, among them Dexter Gordon, Gerald Wilson, Dizzy Gillespie, Billie Holiday, and Quincy Jones. She composed and arranged music for Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Randy Weston, Tony Bennett, Edie Fisher, Billy Eckstine, The Supremes, Dinah Washington, Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, Bob Marley, Marvin Gaye, and more. Today, Melba Liston sounds are heard across the black musical diaspora, including jazz, rhythm and blues, and reggae. Did you know the trombone's name means large trumpet and is about 9 feet long when stretched out?